Tonight, the massive recovery effort goes on. Americans search for answers, and their leaders contemplate action. There you see a night vigil currently at Union Square in New York City. That's a couple of blocks above where all the tragedy took place. Some brief updates for you. The United States Capitol was briefly evacuated today. Dick Cheney has moved on to Camp David to keep him apart from the president. Some airlines have restarted operations. However, Chicago's O'Hare, Washington's Reagan, and the 3 New York City airports all remain closed. And the black box from the United flight that went down in Pennsylvania has been found. I spoke with Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld just moments ago, and the first thing I wanted to know is how this has affected him personally.
It's a very emotional thing to see the damage that's been done to our country, not just the Pentagon, but of course in New York City as well. On the other hand, you look around and see the wonderful response of the people here in the Department of Defense who have helped save lives, the wonderful firefighters and Red Cross people, and so people who've come from all over Virginia and Maryland and neighboring states to help. They're still very much in the process of bringing bodies out of this building, and it will take some time to do it. The damage was so just enormous, and the power of that aircraft filled with jet fuel, driving almost completely through the building, just almost to the inner courtyard. So it's on the one hand, it's a terribly sad, difficult time, and your heart goes out to the friends and families of the casualties and the people who've been killed. On the other hand, you see how patriotic the American people are, the wonderful response they've shown, and it tells a lot about our country.
But there's a lot of personal pain, isn't there?
Indeed.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, first, well, let's hopscotch cover a lot of bases. Secretary of State Powell described Saddam Hussein today, quote, as one of the leading terrorists on the face of the earth. Is Iraq considered in your equation of one of these people we're at war with?
I think that the President of the United States has said it correctly, that there are a number of terrorists, and some of them are countries, states, others are non-state entities. They have a pattern of working somewhat together from time to time. There's a number of states that harbor and facilitate the active work of terrorists who may or may not be nationals of their country. There's no question but that all one has to do is to read the words of Saddam Hussein by his own testimony, his own self-indictment. He is a promoter and an encourager of terrorism. He has been for a good long time, and he unquestionably is today.
What, Secretary Rumsfeld, will you have to know before we do anything? I mean, what do you have to know?
Well, you know, what you need to do is to establish some linkages between an organization or an organization that's harboring and facilitating an organization that you can reasonably say has been connected to either this event or other events. And the President of the United States has decided that terrorism strikes at the very heart of our way of life. We are a free people, and the purpose of terrorism is to terrorize. It's to alter behavior, and to the extent free people have to alter their behavior, they're no longer free. And he's decided that there has to be a broad-based, sustained effort against terrorism on this earth.
So if a country is behind it, then the country bears the prey of us.
Well, indeed, any country that harbors and facilitates and encourages or finances or even tolerates that kind of activity in their country clearly is as responsible as the terrorist.
Do you fear when something like this happens, other terrorist groups not involved in this suddenly looking for a way to take advantage?
Well, there's no question. There's a lot of that can happen in the world. But what we're dealing with here is something that is distinctively new to the United States of America because of our geography and our history. We have not had to deal with this kind of problem. Other countries have. Well, we've now arrived at a point where our country itself, as well as American interests around the globe, have been and can be seriously damaged. And it's going to require as the President said, a war, a major, long-range, broad-based, sustained effort to see that this does not damage our way of life.
What about the surprise? Were you as surprised as everyone, Mr. Secretary, at the lack of intelligence here? 4 planes taken, 3 succeed in their missions, and if not for the heroics, there might have been a 4th success.
Larry, I guess I've kind of stopped being surprised in my life. I expect what people call surprises. You know, there's a saying that says that there are known knowns, there are things we know, there are known unknowns, that is to say things we know that we don't know, but we at least know we don't know them. And then there are unknown unknowns, the things we don't know, and those are the dangerous ones. And the world is a big place. There are an awful lot of people, there's an awful lot of locations, and it is physically impossible to have intelligence that will enable you to know everything going on in this globe. And a terrorist can attack at any time, in any place, using any technique. It's not possible to defend at every time, in every place, against every technique. That's why the President is so on the mark that we have to go after and root out the terrorists and those who are harboring those terrorists. That's the only way that problem can be dealt with.
And how, just a couple more moments, how do we define retaliation? Do we retaliate through a legal means? Do we retaliate through an armed force? What's the definition in your head of retaliation?
Larry, I don't think of it as retaliation. I don't think of it as punishment. I think of it as self-defense. The United States of America has every right to defend itself. And that is what it is about. It is consciously saying that countries and entities and people who actively oppose the United States and damage our interests by acts of violence, acts of war, are our enemies. And they are people and organizations and entities and states that we have every right to defend ourselves against. And that is what this is about. It is to protect the freedom and the way of life of the American people. Self-defense. Yes, sir.
Is bin Laden definitely near or at the top of this list?
There is no question, but Osama bin Laden has been for many years now, by his own pronouncements, anti-West, anti-U.S., anti a number of regimes in the Arab world. He has a very well-financed network. It is at the right moment the President and the United States government will decide what it intends to do by way of characterizing countries or characterizing individuals like Osama bin Laden, and whether or not in our judgment they have or do not have a direct relationship to this activity, but that time has not come.
And any comments on the Capitol Hill evacuation earlier?
No, I really don't. I've been in and around government for a long time, and I've seen bomb threats in buildings that I've occupied many, many times. As a matter of fact, we had one here at the Pentagon this morning at, I believe, 7 o'clock or something. And it is not unusual. We learn to live with these things, and we come back to work and go about our business.
And those military planes flying around Washington and New York, that will continue?
We have called down the intercept aircraft and the AWACS from across the country as commercial aviation started up today, I believe, at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We have continued to fly some so-called CAP aircraft in the Washington-New York corridor, and I have not made a decision as to when I will call that down. And we do, however, have interceptors on strip alert, 15-minute alert, across the country on some 26 bases, so we've got an awful lot of men and women who are doing a great job.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Secretary. Always good seeing you. Hope next time it's under better circumstances.
Thank you very much, Larry.
We'll have some compelling survivor stories in a moment. Here's what a portion of what President Bush had to say this morning.
Through the tears of sadness, I see an opportunity. You know, make no mistake about it, this nation is sad. But we're also tough and resolute. And now's an opportunity to do generations a favor by coming together and whipping terrorism, hunting it down, finding it, and holding them accountable.
You're watching a special edition of Larry King Live. We'll be with you live throughout the weekend, by the way, and in a little while, Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton will join us. Right now, let's go to New York. Standing by are Brian and Jean Monahan. Their 21-year-old son, also named Brian, is missing in the World Trade Center. John Genovese, his brother Steve, is missing at the World Trade Center. Steve worked as a trader for Cantor Fitzgerald on the 104th floor. And Lenny and Leona Zeppelin, their son Mark, is missing as well, and he also worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. Let's start with Brian and Jean. I understand, Brian, this was the, second day your son was on the job?
Yes, it was, Larry.
And when did you hear from him at all that morning, Jean, or,
yes,
or either one?
I did.
Wow.
He called me at 9 o'clock and told me that the building next door to him just exploded, and it was on, and I said, what do you mean exploded? And he said, flames are coming out, people are on the roof, I gotta go. And he hung up, and that was the last I heard from him.
And then we have heard, Brian, that he could have, he was going to leave Building 2 and then went back in to volunteer?
Well, the story that we got, Larry, was one of the girls that he was with, they were going down to the stairs, he was with them. She made it to the 78th floor with him and his partner, Maurice, and when she got out the building, they were asking for volunteers, and when she turned around, he was gone. So apparently he either went back into the building or he stayed in the building to try to help.
And who, Jean, if anyone, gives you any information about him, if at all?
I haven't gotten really any information. I've checked lists, I've called hospitals, but it's still, everything's unknown.
You're going to go to Bellevue tomorrow? What's at Bellevue?
Bellevue has another list they put up. They seem to update the list every day, they say, so tomorrow I'll just go back downtown again.
What kind of boy is your son, Brian?
He's a happy fella. He's a great kid. Everybody that knows him likes him. He's always got a smile on his face, as you can see by his pictures. Yeah. I've never heard anybody say anything weird about him. He's a good kid.
Jeannie, is he the kind of kid that would run back in to help?
Yes, he would.
We wish you the best.
Thank
Brian
you.
and Jean Monahan. Now joining us is John Genovese. His brother Steve is missing as well at the World Trade Center. Steve worked on the 104th floor. He was a trader for Cantor Fitzgerald. John, when did you last talk to Steve?
I did not speak to him on Tuesday morning. He actually left a message with his wife, Shelley, right after the first plane hit. He said he was just going to try and evacuate the building as soon as he could.
Is he your younger brother or older brother?
He's a year younger, Larry.
He left a message for his wife, right?
That is correct.
Do you know what he said?
He said, Shelley, I think the building just got hit by a plane or a bomb or something like that, and I have to get out of here. I have to leave as soon as I can.
John, what do you do, by the way?
I'm also a NASDAQ trader for JP Morgan Securities.
Do you work nearby?
Yes, I do. I work on 60 Wall Street, which is roughly 3 or 4 blocks away from the World Trade Center.
How did you learn of what was going on, and when did you first fear for Steve?
Actually, somebody in my trading department, Larry, came over to me and said something really bad just happened at the World Trade Center. And then we put on the TV and actually saw what happened. I tried to reach him by phone, and usually his trading department picks up the phone on the first or second ring. And when it rang 7 or 8 times, I knew something bad happened.
So you feared the worst almost immediately?
Absolutely.
This had to all be incomprehensible to you, right, John?
Yes, but Steve's been through this actually in 1993 when the first bombing happened. He actually made it down 104 flights and was safe.
Wow.
And and I thought it was the same result was going to happen this time around.